Speak English anyway, a place where confidence matters more than perfection, and every voice deserves to be heard.
Hey people, I'm Linda.
And I'm Ethan, and I want to warn everyone that today's episode might make you feel things, possibly inconvenient things, possibly at a time when you are on public transit and cannot cry without explanation.
He is not wrong. Today, we are going somewhere personal. We are talking about friendships, specifically friendships made in English, in a language that is not your first one, in a language where you are still finding your way.
I will say up front, I have thoughts about this topic, strong ones. I may interrupt.
You may interrupt, you should interrupt. That is why you are here. So, today we are going to talk about what it actually feels like to make friends in English when English is not your first language, the specific kind of loneliness that can come with it, the specific kind of joy, and why those friendships, the ones you built in a second language, can mean something different from any other friendship you have.
And also why they sometimes feel like they happen despite you rather than because of you, like you fell into them accidentally.
Yes, that is actually a perfect way to say it. You fell into them because you were not your most polished self. You were uncertain, searching, imperfect, and somehow that created the conditions for something real.
Imperfection as the secret ingredient, which, as someone who has been imperfect in English for many years, is very reassuring to hear.
Okay, so I want to start with something that I think a lot of people feel, but almost nobody says out loud. When you are learning English and you are around native speakers or very fluent speakers, there can be this quiet feeling of being less, of presenting a smaller version of yourself than the one that exists in your first language.
Oh, I felt this for years. In my first language, I am genuinely funny. In English, early on, I was accidentally funny at best, meaning I said things incorrectly and people laughed for the wrong reasons.
Accidentally funny is a real phase.
A very humbling phase. You learn quickly which things are funny and which things are just confusing. The difference is uncomfortable, especially when you think you made a great joke and someone asks if you're okay.
Are you okay is not the response you want to a joke. Because in your first language, you have all of it. The humor, the subtlety, the references, the way you tell a story, the exact right word that arrives at the exact right moment. You are full. You are complete. You are yourself. And in English, especially in the beginning, you're working with less.
And here's what I found the most disorienting. People were very kind about it, genuinely kind, which almost made it worse, because their kindness was the kindness you show a child who is learning. And I was not a child. I was an adult person with opinions and ideas, and I thought some real wit, and none of that was getting through.
The kindness that feels slightly patronizing even though it absolutely is not meant to be.
Exactly. It comes from a good place, and it still stings a little, like being applauded for finishing your vegetables. You did a thing, but perhaps not the thing you were aiming for.
And I remember feeling it very specifically in the first year of living in an English-speaking city. I had conversations, I had acquaintances, but I kept feeling like none of these people really know me. They know this English version of me, this quieter, slower, more careful version, but they have not met the real one yet.
The real one with the full vocabulary and the quick comebacks and the cultural references that actually land instead of landing adjacent to the intended spot.
Yes, and I think a lot of people carry this feeling quietly, and they do not know it has a name.
Does it have a name?
I think the name is language grief, the grief of a self that cannot fully show up yet because the language is not ready. And like all grief, you do not get rid of it by ignoring it. You get through it by acknowledging it, by saying, yes, this is real, yes, it is hard, and yes, it changes.
I want to push back on this slightly. Not on the grief, that is real, I've felt it, but on the idea that the language version of you is automatically smaller, because I think sometimes the English version becomes something genuinely different, not a reduced version, a different cut of the same stone.
Say more.
In my first language, I am very fast, very verbal. I fill silences automatically. In English, especially early on, I could not do that. I had to listen more because speaking cost more effort. And people told me I was a good listener, which I had never been told in my life, because in my first language I was too busy talking.
So English accidentally made you better at listening?
English accidentally made me a better person, against my will. I did not sign up for personal growth. I signed up for grammar exercises.
The most reluctant personal growth. Okay, something else starts to happen too. Something that surprised me completely. You start to build a self in English, not a translation of your first language self, something new, something that belongs to English.
Right. The jokes I make in English now are not translation versions of jokes from my first language. They grew in English. They would not exist in my first language because my first language would not have taken me to those situations, those observations, those specific moments of mild social disaster that generated them.
Not better or worse, just different. A version of you shaped by the experience of navigating this second language, by the vulnerability of not always knowing the word, by the humor of getting things wrong and surviving it.
And by the specific intimacy that comes from being seen by someone even when your language is imperfect.
Yes, because when someone sees you in your imperfect English, when they like you, when they laugh with you, when they choose to spend time with you even when your words come slowly and sometimes wrong, they are seeing something very real. They are seeing the part of you that is willing to try, that is willing to be awkward and brave at the same time.
That is actually a more honest version of a person than most people show in their native language. In our first language, we can hide, we can perform, we have all the tools to present exactly what we want. In a second language, the mask is harder to hold.
That is a really good point. The mask is harder to hold in a second language. You're too busy finding words to maintain the performance.
And what falls through the performance is often the best stuff.
The best stuff. And the friendships that form in that space, in the space of imperfect, brave English, they have a specific texture, a specific warmth, because they were made through effort and willingness and showing up even when it was uncomfortable.
I have a theory about this. Friendships formed when you're a little lost, learning a language, arriving somewhere new, figuring something out. Those friendships tend to go deep faster. Because you're already vulnerable, you've already shown that you're not completely sure what you're doing, and vulnerability accelerates intimacy.
That is research-backed, actually. Psychologists have studied this. Shared challenge creates faster and stronger bonds than shared comfort.
So, struggling in English is technically an accelerant for friendship.
That is one way to reframe it.
I am very good at reframing. It is a skill I developed in English, ironically.
Okay, I want to tell you about a specific friend, a person I met in English and who became one of the most important people in my life. Her name is Sarah. She's a native English speaker. We met at a community event, the kind where everyone is supposed to mingle and nobody actually wants to, and everyone is holding a drink and pretending to look at their phone.
I have been to that event. I think it runs simultaneously in every country every Friday evening. Global synchronized awkwardness.
Globally synchronized. And I was standing near a table of snacks, as one does when one does not know anyone, and she came and stood near the same table. And she said, "I genuinely cannot decide between the mini quiches. I have been standing here for 4 minutes."
4 minutes on mini quiches? This is a woman of conviction.
Strong conviction. And I laughed, not a polite laugh, a real one, because I had also been standing there using the snacks as social cover. And I said, "I am also not here for the quiches." And she said, "Then we are both frauds. Hello, I'm Sarah."
That is excellent. She opened with honesty and a shared conspiracy. Textbook perfect friendship start.
And we talked for 2 hours. And at some point, I wanted to respond with something funny, and in English, it came out slow and slightly clumsy and not quite the version I had imagined. And she laughed anyway, not at the clumsiness, at the actual thing I was trying to say. She heard through the imperfect delivery to the real joke underneath. And I remember thinking, oh, This person is listening in a particular way. She is not hearing my English, she is hearing me.
When someone does that, when they hear through the language to the actual person, you keep them. That is not common. Most people hear the surface, the accent, the hesitation, the grammar. This person was reading between the lines of all that and finding you. That's a real skill, and also just a kind of love, I think.
A kind of love, yes. We have been friends for 7 years now. 7 years of conversations where I showed up with imperfect English and she showed up with patience and genuine curiosity. And somewhere along the way, the friendship outgrew the language entirely. It became something language could not fully contain.
That is the sign, when the friendship outgrows the words it was built in. At that point, it doesn't matter what language you use. The thing between you is bigger than any of it.
Now I want to talk about the practical side, because I know someone is listening and thinking, I do not have a Sarah. I haven't found the person who listens through my imperfect English to the real me underneath. What do I do?
Go to events with bad mini quiches. Statistically, someone brave will be standing near the snacks.
That is strategy 1. The slightly more scalable answer: put yourself in spaces where curious people gather around something you genuinely care about. Language exchanges, community groups, shared interest communities online. Because shared interest creates a shortcut through the awkward early phase.
Shared interest gives you a topic before you have chemistry, and the topic buys time for the chemistry to develop. Without the topic, you're just two people standing near food hoping something happens.
And you speak, even imperfectly, even slowly, even when the words come out in the wrong order, because the people who are meant to be your people will hear you. They always do. And beginnings usually look ordinary from the inside.
Beginnings usually look ordinary from the inside. You do not know it is the beginning while you are in it. You think you were just having a conversation near some quiches. You do not know until later.
Until later, when you look back and see the shape of it. And one more thing. It is okay to tell people that English is not your first language. Not as an apology, just as information. A small, honest piece of yourself offered to someone.
Yes, and in my experience, when you say it, the conversation often shifts in the best way. People get curious. They ask where you are from. Some of them become quietly protective in a warm way. They slow down a little. They check that you are following. And that care, that small adjustment, that is a person showing you they want you to be in the conversation. That is a person worth knowing.
Vulnerability invites vulnerability. That's where real friendship begins. Not in the perfect conversation, in the honest one.
The honest one, always. I have never made a real friend through a perfect conversation. Every friendship I have that matters started with something slightly awkward or slightly too honest or slightly unexpected. The scripted moments are fine. The unexpected ones are where you actually meet someone.
Where you actually meet someone. Okay, word tour time.
7 words, nothing gentle about it despite the name.
First word, grief.
Grief is deep emotional pain from losing something important, a person, a place, or a version of yourself. Language grief is the sadness of not being able to fully show up in a second language. Real, valid, and it passes.
For example, she had not expected to grieve the version of herself that only existed in her first language. Or, language grief is quiet. It visits you in small moments when you reach for a word and it is not there.
Grief. Repeat. Grief.
Grief. Next, condensed.
Condensed means made smaller or more compact. A condensed version of yourself is not fake, just incomplete. Less of you fitting through the available space.
For example, in a second language, many people feel like a condensed version of themselves. Or, she hated presenting a condensed version of her humor in English. The jokes were always slightly smaller than she wanted.
Condensed. Repeat. Condensed.
condensed. Next, intimate.
Intimate means close, personal, deeply connected. The opposite of surface, the opposite of fine. When something is intimate, it involves real trust and real vulnerability.
For example, being seen in your imperfect English is actually more intimate than being seen in your polished first language. Or, the friendship had an unusual intimacy because it was built through genuine effort and honesty on both sides.
Intimate. Repeat, intimate.
Intimate. Next, accelerant.
An accelerant is something that speeds up a process. Originally a fire term, things that make flames burn faster. In everyday use, anything that makes something develop more quickly than it otherwise would.
For example, shared vulnerability is an accelerant for friendship. It makes people feel close faster. Or, struggling together is a better accelerant for connection than succeeding separately.
Accelerant. Repeat, accelerant.
Accelerant. Next, texture.
Texture is the specific quality of something, its particular character. Friendships have different textures depending on how they were formed, what they survived, what they cost.
For example, friendships made in a second language have a specific texture built through vulnerability and effort. Or, the texture of that friendship was unlike anything else, hard to explain, easy to feel.
Texture. Repeat, texture.
Texture. Next, vulnerable.
Vulnerable means open to being seen, judged, or hurt, exposed in a way that requires courage. In a second language, you are structurally vulnerable, whether you choose to be or not, which is, as we discussed, actually an advantage.
For example, telling someone that English is not your first language is a small act of vulnerability that often opens doors. Or, the mask is harder to hold in a second language, and what falls through is often the most real part of you.
Vulnerable. Repeat, vulnerable.
Vulnerable. And last one, compatible.
Compatible means well-suited to each other. Not every person will be compatible with you. In English, in any language. That is not failure. That is just the normal human experience of being selective. Most people are pleasant. Few people are yours.
For example, not every missed connection is about the language gap. Some people are simply not compatible as friends. Or, she stopped blaming her English for failed connections and recognized that compatibility is separate from vocabulary.
Compatible. Repeat, compatible.
Compatible. 3 actions for this week.
Real ones.
Action 1. Think of one friendship you have made in English, even a small one. What made it possible? What did you bring? What did they bring? Give it some thought today. Let it remind you that you have already done this before.
Action 2. This week, tell one person in English one small, honest thing about yourself. Not a big confession, just something real. Something that is a little more vulnerable than fine. See what happens.
And action 3, find one space this week where people gather around something you genuinely care about. Because people bonded by shared interest connect faster and deeper than people bonded by nothing but proximity.
The quiches bring you to the table. The interest keeps you there.
Take care of your English.
And take care of your heart.
This is Linda.
And this is Ethan. You've been listening to Speak English Anyway.
Bye, everyone. And if you haven't found your Sarah yet, keep going. She is out there at a snack table somewhere, also not there for the quiches.
Nobody is ever there for the quiches. The quiches are just where the brave people wait for each other.